Once again, thank you everyone for participating in today's seminar on parenting. This is going to be given by our today's speaker, Her Grace Arudha Mataji. We had one session with her yesterday, and this is in continuation to that. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the call to Arudha Mataji. Arudha Mataji, are you there on the call? Hare Krishna, Arudha Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Dandvat Pranam, Mataji.
Dandvat Pranam, all the way, Srila Prabhupada. I think we should wait. Hare Krishna, welcome to our second day of our seminar on the art of Krishna conscious parenting. And today we're going to cover two sections of our seminar. And before I do that, I just want to recap what we did yesterday. And we covered a very important part of our parenting, and that was how to set up the home environment to make it very conducive for our children. And we covered several topics in that. We covered the do's and the don'ts. The don'ts were, not watching television, limiting internet, and the do's were, having a nice morning program, eating prasadam, good association, and deity worship. So, and today we're going to go to the heart of the seminar, and that will cover the second part of ISKCON motto, second one, which is books are the basis. So, what I'm going to try to do in this section is bring to highlight the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books, not only for the adults but also for our children. And this is something that we should focus. We should, as parents and as teachers, we should focus more on that. Just because the growing up years of children are very much ready for this to understand the philosophy, and that really becomes the basis of their Krishna conscious life. And it can be presented in a way, and I'm going to talk also about how to present this Shastra in a way that's very digestible for children. We're also going to talk about methodology and for different ages. So let me start out with saying that how much Srila Prabhupada he wanted that children right from the beginning should be taught Sanskrit and English, so that in the future they could read his books. And that's actually what he stressed on was that if they learned English and Sanskrit, then they will be able to do that very well. English so that they could read his books, and Sanskrit because that's is the language in which Shastra is written. And so if the child starts out learning Sanskrit early on, he will be able to relish and assimilate Shastra. And so he said that if children grow up studying English and Sanskrit, then they will, and read his books, then they will be more than MA, PhD. And Srila Prabhupada, in many of his lectures, he stressed this point, how important Srimad Bhagavatam that is for our children, the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, during his lifetime, he wanted Srimad Bhagavatam to be introduced in the Gurukula curriculum. And here's a wonderful quote that I would like to read to you that kind of brings home that point. Prabhupada says, our students specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school Dallas, and from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad Gita and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA, PhD. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully, then you will get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one simply reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, his education is the topmost. If one studies Srimad Bhagavatam, he is well versed in every subject matter. We can see how much stress Prabhupada put in his books. And he said that Srimad Bhagavatam covers all the subjects that you can think of. And so when we start out teaching Srimad Bhagavatam to our children, they would have covered all the subjects, so that when they had to go and study, when they had to study the outside subjects, then they would be their foundation would be so strong in theistic thinking, in Vedic conclusions, that no matter what subject they studied, they would be very well situated. So different subjects like practically every subject that he mentioned can be taught from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And all of you, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam to some extent, you can see how it covers so many subject matters. Like we can study history. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the historical, and not only just the historical account of so many great kings and devotees, but also an analysis of their lives. It is meant to create practically a revolution in our hearts. We see how all these kings who are mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam were not only just good leaders, but their number one priority was to spread Krishna consciousness in their kingdom. Not only that, they were an excellent example of their own lives. And as we study history, for example, through the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can see how history, is not a chronological history like we have modern history, but it's the history of the most important people, the most great souls in Vedic history. And studying the accounts, studying the stories is meant to bring us closer to Krishna, to fulfill the purpose for which Krishna created the material world. In other words, go back home, back to Godhead. So in a similar way, we see step by step how Srimad Bhagavatam covers practically everything that we can think of. For example, Prabhupada said, Srimad Bhagavatam can give us an insight into every psychological situation in the world. Just by understanding the great personalities and their moods and how they reacted, just gives us a very deep insight into the psychology of how people act and why they act. So that becomes very handy for people, for children, as they move out into the world and try to make sense of it. So, and of course, we understand that the first book is Bhagavad Gita, and then we come up to Srimad Bhagavatam. However, because Srimad Bhagavatam is in the form of stories, it's very good for our children, because this way their interest is there. And as we know, Srimad Bhagavatam covers all the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita. So there is no harm in studying Srimad Bhagavatam for our children. So let us now understand the spiritual benefits from reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, we talked a little bit about yesterday about good role models, because these personalities provide such great examples, and it helps in the character development of children. for example, if they were told by their parents or teachers to behave well, to be good to their friends, to honor their father and mother, yes, it has some impact, but very little. I remember when I used to go to convent in India, then we had a moral science class, and I remember it used to be the first class, and it was something that we had to quickly go through, and it wasn't something that we took seriously, because those things don't hold in the heart. Those moral values don't hold in the heart of the children. What really holds is when we read the stories and the great personalities and have direct association with these great personalities, their qualities go deep into the children's hearts, because these people they're not fake, they're not mythology, they're not just statements, but actually they show it in their lives. And as the children read, they imbibe the character of these personalities, and as they get older, they start to appreciate their instructions. For example, we will be talking about the story of Dhruva Maharaj, how we learned so much in that story about his quality of gratefulness, for example, how his mother was his first guru, and he exemplified his quality of gratefulness, where he did not forget her when it was time for him to go back to Godhead. And even after 36,000 years, he remembered his mother, who was just his first guru, who may have given him instructions maybe for a few minutes, but it went so deep in his heart, it changed his life. So he was grateful to her. So this quality of gratefulness goes very deep when we read that story, right? So children, when they read these stories, they are affected by it because it's an example. It's another great hero that they can relate to, Dhruva Maharaj. Prabhupada used to say that these are not just theoretical things. When we read these stories, we actually soak it in, and children can actually emulate such personalities. Every child, he said, can become a Prahlad or a Dhruva Maharaj. So really the real crux of the whole idea why we want our children to read Srimad Bhagavatam is character development. Because Prabhupada said, what is the use of just being a learned person if we cannot apply this knowledge?
Mataji, we are still on the first slide.
Really? Okay. So I did screen sharing. I thought I was moving it. So what was the problem yesterday that I can solve again? Do you know?
The left tab, you can click on the slide. No, Mataji. Can you click on the play button again? Yes. Now you can manually hit the slides.
Yeah. You mean the slides?
Yes, on the slides.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see it now?
We can see the first slide.
Oh, just only the first till, huh?
Yes. On the left side, if you touch on the 19th slide, we can see the 19th slide. Just touch on the 19th slide.
You mean you just...
I think we lost. Click on the play button, Mataji. I'll take the... Just click on the play button.
Okay, so let me see if I can get some help, okay?
Yes, Mataji.
Playing screen sharing. Screen sharing नहीं आ रहा है. We cannot see the slides move. Okay. Screen sharing. What's wrong? No. What do you want to character? Or should I turn on?
Can you click on the slide?
Is the video on? Yes. You can see me, right?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. I can off कर दिया ना वीडियो. Yes, चलो. Screen sharing, yeah. When I move the slides, they're not able to see the moving. You know, it's not working. Yeah, for them. Yeah.
Please. Don't make
My screen is moving. It's just their screen is not moving. Oh, yeah. I don't even know how to use this now. And how do you go left? Yeah, I'm not used to this now. But it's not moving for them. Is it moving now? Like, can you see the slides, or is it just the first one?
You still see the first one.
Okay. Well, we are trying, and I don't know what's wrong, you know.
Okay. That's okay, Mataji. You can continue to speak, and maybe it will move.
Oh. It's not such right. Should have been कल भी हो गया था. I don't know how we solved it though. So I'm trying to share. Should we do it all over again?
Yeah. See, look. You select items.
It's already showing in mine, but it's not moving for them.
Apply to. Apply changes.
Signature, please.
कंप्लीट होते लेकिन फिर ठीक हो गया था.
Yes, this is good.
Can you see it now?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, so I can use the mouse. I can't see it. Oh, yeah, we have to go to the next one now. The next slide. Is it going to go to the next one? Okay,
Yes, Mataji.
okay, good. Can you, is the video on also? Can you see me? It's not on, right? No. Okay, yes.
Yeah, perfect, Mataji. You can continue.
Okay, can you, I turned the video on. I don't know why it's taking such a long time. Okay, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Sorry everyone about this, but actually a few people here were trying to get it and it was still taking a lot of time. I don't know what happened. So anyway, we'll continue with I'll continue with my presentation on the importance of study of Srimad Bhagavatam for our children. We talked a little bit about Srila Prabhupada's desire, how he wanted Srimad Bhagavatam to be taught to our children right from the early stages and throughout the Gurukula years, which is basically from from 5 to 12 years of a child's life. So by giving them this foundation in Srimad Bhagavatam, it really, parents who have done that, they can attest to the fact that how the whole character changes, the whole mood changes. There's so many, they're not only spiritual benefits, which we all understand, but also academic benefits. They are really great. Because we don't want to minimize the spiritual side, of how Srila Prabhupada said that when a person reads Srimad Bhagavatam, his heart becomes pure and he actually can go back to Godhead. So the purpose of reading Srimad Bhagavatam is to associate with the Lord Himself. But the point of the matter is that how Srimad Bhagavatam can be such a benefit for our children all around. It helps them to make sense of this world. It helps them to face the challenges that come up in front of them. Like we were talking yesterday, the different conflicts that they go through in their life, understanding, trying to understand the values that they see outside with their own personal values, to make sense of that, to be able to answer questions that come up in their life. Why am I different? Why is, why is there so much injustice in the world? Why is there so much violence in the world? And Srimad Bhagavatam actually gives answers to everything, to all of these things. And of course, what to speak of deep philosophical topics like why is God partial? Is Krishna partial to his devotees? or why is there so much suffering in the world? So these questions, the deeper questions and the basic questions are all answered in this great literature called Srimad Bhagavatam. And now we're going to talk about the academic benefits. Okay. Now I'm having a problem trying to move this slide. Okay, there we go. Yeah, there we go. See, academic benefits of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam gives in our children one of the main assets, and that's how to think critically, how to reason, how to think critically. And we can see that, as we read story after story, there's so much. It's not just about the storyline, the plot line, what happened. It's deeper than that. It's not the storyline. Okay, Maharaj he went on hunting one day and he got thirsty, and so he went to a rishi's cottage, and he got upset because he didn't receive him well, and he threw the snake on his head, around his neck, and he was cursed by his son. So this is the storyline, the plot line. But there's a lot in it that helps the children actually understand why and how of things. Analyze why Parikshit did that. Was he okay in throwing the snake around the rishi's head? Was Shringi acting properly when he cursed such a small thing? How did Shamak Rishi behave, considering in the light that it was his own son who did this, and how he was as good as great a devotee as Parikshit Maharaj? What was his reaction? There were so many things that goes into thinking this story. The other day I was doing a class with older children, and regarding the story, and we made two groups, and one group argued why Parikshit Maharaj's decision to leave the kingdom was good, when he heard he was going to die in 7 days, and why the other side was to argue that why it was wrong to leave his family at such short notice, to leave his citizens in the kingdom without a king. So we were discussing that, and it became such a wonderful session where children are able to express their different views and try to convince on their own platform. And of course, the side that, in conclusion, we understood that how Parikshit Maharaj was right in doing what he did, because there were some deeper reasons. So it's like, studying Srimad Bhagavatam is like peeling layer after layer, getting to the heart of, getting deeper and deeper. And as a child reads again and again, he's able to, because he's been trained in the art of how to take a situation, take something, a problem, any subject matter, think about it critically, organize, synthesize, and to come to conclusions, to find a solution to that problem. This very process of thinking through a problem is the basis of is what employers and educational institutions are looking for. Is these skills. Gone are the days when we were just, education meant that, okay, you just memorize some formulas and you write it in your examination. Those days are gone. What people are looking for, what employers are looking for are these kind of skills. And they are naturally found very strongly in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. For example, in America, if anybody wants to become a lawyer, then they are always looking for, they prefer a student who's going for law to have a degree in philosophy. Now, why philosophy? Not because of the content that the philosophy is going to give, but it's about the critical thinking and analysis that one requires to come to philosophical conclusions. So you can see how these abilities are also very practical and very valuable in our children's, collection, because then they can actually find more confidence in their life. it actually creates a child who's not only physically, spiritually very strong, having taken all these amazing qualities from Srimad Bhagavatam, but also he or she is able to actually function in this world as a very, very intelligent and as a very intelligent person who's not going to take, again, the important quality of being able to critically think, because as they go into the world, they're not just going to take things blindly, whatever is told to them in terms of, materialistic thinking, or, especially if they study, science or philosophy, so much of it is all atheistic, mechanistic, and naturally the tendency is to just believe what's given to them, because it's always presented in such a vivid way that one just believes that. But giving them a foundation in Srimad Bhagavatam and inculcating in them this ability to not take things just blindly, but to actually go into it and actually reason it and logically, like for example, Srimad Bhagavatam has so many, as we know, analogies and metaphors. Now, a typical analogy would be that Prabhupada uses a lot is the difference between the body and the soul. How he compares that with the car and the driver. And he goes really deep with that analogy. One time, Srila Prabhupada was talking to a reporter, and just to get him to understand the purpose of this Krishna conscious movement is, which meant to understand the difference between body and soul, he took that analogy so deep, and he didn't give it up till the reporter actually understood, the reasoning behind it. So you can see how it gives one the ability to actually analyze in a logical way before accepting something, And this is very, very important as our children go out into the world. We see, I don't know if you met young people from India who've gone to IIT and all. They completely, coming from such a wonderful culture, Vedic culture in India, one would think that anybody would have some faith in the existence of God. But nowadays, if you talk to young people, there's nothing. There's no faith. It's all been overtaken by this type of thinking, which they get in schools and colleges, So this foundation, so Prabhupada's point was that the foundation of his books is give our children and adults this knowledge from Srimad Bhagavatam is literally it will create a revolution in our society, in the world. So it's very, very important. And what to speak of other wonderful assets that children take is good vocabulary, of course, and communication skills, because Prabhupada said his books are masters and PhD. And any child, even a 6-year-old child, can begin reading. And it's miraculous how one sees the results very quickly, because these books are not ordinary. They're very, very potent. So here we'll get to the next slide, the methodology for teaching Srimad Bhagavatam. And this was something that I tried, when I was teaching them at home, my 2 boys. And, at that age, especially, they were like 5 and 7, and at that age it's very difficult for a child to sit through long pulpits. And so we would just read translations. We would pick some story, like a Prahlad story or Dhruva Maharaj story, and we would take turns reading translations. And this is a very wonderful way that now so many parents are doing when they're teaching their children Srimad Bhagavatam. They're using it in schools, Sunday schools and other schools, and it's working. It actually works. Why? Because when the children get a chance to read, their mind is trapped. They don't get distracted because it's their turn to read. And I do a lot of these phone conference calls with children of different age groups on the phone, and even children who are like between 13 and 16, they love reading, and sometimes when I skip their names, they are very, they're a little upset, and they said, Mataji, you skipped my name. They love reading. Children like to read, children like to talk, to give their opinions, their realizations. So this becomes very, so taking turns reading the translations becomes very effective in capturing their attention. And of course, we throw it for discussion, and every discussion, according to the age groups, if a child is younger, so the discussion naturally will be less challenging, more based on the story. But as they get older, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's amazing. The same child that you started teaching Srimad Bhagavatam when he was very little has developed that capacity to go so deep into it by the time, just in about a year, his capacity. And then what happens is you notice this very child, when he goes out and he has to deal with different things, maybe he's going to school or whatever, his vision has changed in the sense that he's taking a situation that he experiences in school, and he's able to make sense of it. He's able to apply the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, the morality, and in his day-to-day life. So it's not that it creates a child who's very spiritual and who's very saintly, and that's the path he's going to take. He's probably going to end up a preacher and maybe a full-time pujari. No. Srimad Bhagavatam creates a very wholesome and an all-round child, because the principles that are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam can be applied in any modern context, because we understand that Srimad Bhagavatam is not just about the spiritual lives of these great souls, but it's so much about the material world and the problems in the material world and how to deal with it. So it's very, very practical. And then after that discussion, we reflect by giving our opinions on what we imbibed from that story, and then we put it all together by the different lessons that we learn. And so I start out with, or any parent who's doing the process, which is now many, we start out by just, and it's very nice if the parent or teacher is able to read the purpose ahead of time. Not all, if he or she cannot read all of it, at least some of it, because then we are able to bring out the points that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purpose. So even though they are not reading purpose, but they are getting the full benefit of the purpose. Your children just don't have that patience, and we don't want to make it like a burden for them. In other words, it's just too much reading and too much listening, but we want to involve them in a very practical way. So so this is the methodology that we can use for teaching Srimad Bhagavatam to our children. And of course, Srimad Bhagavatam can be taught very early in children's lives, as early, like I said, 2 to 3 year olds. And how do we do that? Of course, Prabhupada's books have a lot of pictures. We can actually point out the pictures. We can point out the different things that they can see, and keep repeating them. Children at this age, they love repetition. So you repeat the story again and again, point out the pictures again and again, and this way they are in touch with Krishna. Krishna is absolute. Srimad Bhagavatam is absolute. So when we read these stories, Prabhupada said we are in it. We are actually in the absolute world, seeing Krishna through the ears. It's a very, very powerful process, and this process can be started very early in a child's life. And then, of course, as the child gets older, we pick out a story that we want to read to them. And the child may not still be able to read, so we read the translations loudly and clearly for them. We stop frequently, we explain the meanings. And it's amazing, even a 4-year-old child and a 5-year-old child is able to sit through a session of like 45 minutes without moving, because this process that we can do is very, very, it involves the child, because just by explaining the translations of what we are reading and involving the child by asking him questions, with basic questions and also challenging questions, he's able to understand. He's able to keep. We can keep his interest. And I have an experience of teaching a boy who was, he was like 4.5 years old, and we were doing the Dhruva story one time, and we had come to the part where the beautiful airplane had come towards the end when Dhruva had finished his life, his kingship. When he got the, Krishna gave him an entire planet, and when it was time for him to go back, then he saw the airplane from Vaikuntha coming to get him, and the two Nanda and Sunanda, they were on the airplane, and there was such a beautiful description of how the airplane looked and the beautiful form of these two great servants of Krishna, and then when he heard that, he said, I want to go back to Godhead right now. And I thought, well, he's excited. And I said, okay, very good. And we were trying to move on. And then he said, no, but I want to go home back to Godhead now. And I said, are you sure you want to leave your parents behind? Because you would have to if you want to go right now. And then he thought about it for a minute, and he said, for a few minutes, and he said, okay, I think I'm going to wait because I don't want to make the same mistake as Ajamal did. So the story of Ajamal we had read some months ago. And I don't know if you can connect that, and you remember what happened in the story of Ajamal, how, Ajamal, when he fell down with a prostitute, and we hear about, his activities, in trying to maintain the prostitute was very sinful. And then finally he became like 88 years old, and he had his 9th child, and his name was Narayan, and he was very little, and he was very fond of him. And so as he was lying on his bed, and his time for leaving came very close, then the Yamadutas came, and they tried to take him for punishment, and the Vishnuduta stopped him because he had chanted Narayan, the name of Narayan. Of course, he was calling for his friend, but yet the name of the Lord is so powerful. And then as he got saved by Vishnudutas, almost at the last minute, he came to his senses, and he realized all the sinful things he had done, and he felt very regretful. And one of the things he really regretted was his neglect of his old parents. And so he talked about that, he expresses that. So he remembered, this little child remembered that Ajamal was feeling sorry, regretful of what he had done. And he connected the two stories. And he said, okay, I want to go, but not now. I want to take care of my parents. And just think, this quality of gratefulness, or this quality of, being grateful to your superiors, especially to your parents, how can you teach the child in a way that it goes so deep? If we were to just give him a book which says all the different things, how he should behave, it doesn't do much to them. But from the story of Srimad Bhagavatam, it creates such an impact on these children that it actually changes their life. And if this quality is not only exhibited towards their parents, but then it becomes a quality which can manifest in every relationship that they have, with friends, with other devotees, because it's something that goes very deep in their hearts. So, and that is happening with a child who's so young. What to speak of children who are older? The type of impact they have. I remember doing the Dhruva story with a group of children, and everybody, all of them had read Dhruva story long before, many times. But as we did it through Srila Prabhupada's books, it made such an impact that in the end we had a realizations class, and the amazing realizations they came up with. We were talking about all different things, like, the difference between jealousy and envy, when we saw Suruchi's behavior, and how, his Dhruva's transformation, just so many things. And we'll talk about that. We'll take one example of Dhruva's story, and we will go through it step by step to show how we can actually study deeply these kind of stories. Or in fact, as you read these first, as you get the interest up in the children by reading stories, then gradually their hearts will become so attracted to Krishna that they are ready from the first canto. They're ready from the first canto. So once we've developed that attraction, then we go back and start from the first canto. So this is what I did. During my school years with my children, we studied all the 12 cantos, and I had never studied Srimad Bhagavatam before. I was studying with them. So the benefit that parents get is just the same. They also advance. The children also advance. I remember a boy who's been growing up with Srimad Bhagavatam, and he told his mother one day that I want to read something really deep. And she said, what do you want to read? And he says, oh, maybe, Rishabhdev teachings. And he's just like, 7.5 years old. Because it develops such a taste. Nothing perturbs them, just all the descriptions, line after line, about life and death, about a detachment, or at a certain stage, of course, and all these things does not bother them, because the quality of these spiritual books is that it's giving you the facts, the reality, but it's so optimistic, because it gives you a reason what to work for. Whereas just mundane material philosophy is so passive, because there's actually pessimistic, because there's no hope. You see so much suffering, but you don't know what's going to be the destination. What are you going to do? You just become more and more skeptical. You become more and more hard. You become more and more bewildered. Whereas nothing in the Srimad Bhagavatam, even the amount of material suffering that we read and experience through these pages, of other people who have experienced it, it actually becomes a plus point for children. Things that are hidden for the children outside, they're clearly given over here. So all these things. So don't be afraid of getting as deep as you want. Prodding them more and more to get deeper. It's not just for children who are philosophically inclined. It's for anybody, because life is all about that. The purpose of this material world is to actually work towards the purpose that Krishna intended it for. It's not just about understanding the physical laws, how the material world governs, right? How to manipulate the physical part of the material world. And that's what, people and modern scientists are mainly concerned with. They get enamored with the physical laws of this universe. But Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching us beyond that, It's teaching us how to understand the nature of this material world, and who's the creator of this material world, and what is the purpose behind it. There's a purpose behind why we have to live in this world, and what we need to do to live in this world, and the goal, how to get out of this material world. So the children are able gradually to grasp all that, and that is the purpose. If we real love for our children, whether we are as teachers or we as parents, is to give them a formula for happiness, and without understanding deeply the purpose, one cannot provide them with the happiness, no matter how much we try. We can give them all types of material facilities, but those very things will come to haunt us, because without this kind of knowledge, they will actually become too engaged in all types of material love. And if they are too absorbed in material love, then spiritual love is going to be very difficult to inculcate later on in their life. Okay, so this is pretty much very much the same methodology of an older child, and it just means that we need to go deeper and answer more deep questions of why and how. And of course, a lot of things that I did with older children is actually relate everything to the modern world. You know, there's so much out there that children are trying to make sense of, you know, why things are so unjust, why people are suffering, whether it's racial bias, and so many things that children have to deal with now in practical life. And we can try to take those stories and connect those stories. It's so easy. You know, when you read Srila Prabhupada, it's not very difficult to do that. You know, it's very, you know, for example, the story of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu's behavior is so relevant. You know, we have things like, you know, some years ago about Hitler, right? You know, so very similar personality. So we understand it through that. We understand the condition of the world, what's happening today through these stories. You know, how Hiranyakashipu was so demoniac and he was killing all the trees and the fruits, you know, poisoning them practically, right? By his, you know, by his demoniac mentality. So we understand, okay, this is why it happens. But there's a wonderful side to it, is that devotees are always protected, Prahlad is protected, and also Krishna comes to actually finish it. Such, you know, virtue will always rise above, you know, sinful behavior. Okay, so now we'll go to one example here called the Dhruva story. And I thought this would be a nice example to understand how we can teach Srimad Bhagavatam to our children. And I'm not going to go through every question, but just to, I'm sure all of you are aware of this story. It's a very popular story. In fact, Lord Chaitanya read the story of Dhruva and Prahlad hundreds of times. And why did he read hundreds of times and heard hundreds of times? It's because of the lessons that come through in these stories. And each time you read, you get fresh lessons. That's how amazing it is. Even for an adult, you know, the more you read, the more we get lessons from it. And so we see the behavior of Suruchi and the envy that she had in her heart, and in contrast, the behavior of Dhruva's mother, Suniti. What a big contrast. And here was a mother who was, you know, who was simple-hearted. And she gave simple instructions, but deep integrity and faith, and how it changed Dhruva's life. And she gave him the faith that Krishna is a better mother and father. He can satisfy you much more than I can. So this requires a lot of intelligence and deep faith, which she had. And she encouraged him to go and find him. You know, she didn't hold him back as a security for herself. She said no. And this is the duty of every parent, is to give this knowledge to the children, and then it's up to them what they want to do with it. Right? But our first duty comes to give them, and we see that in the quality of Suniti. She was not afraid of directing Dhruva to go out and seek the Lord and fulfill his desires. You know, she directed him. She took a very, very unfortunate situation and made it so fortunate. And that comes across very deep with the children. You know, they understand, okay, there's so many things that happen that are wrong in this world, but how to turn it into the greatest fortune is when we turn towards Krishna, right? When we turn towards Krishna and ask for help, then it can change our whole life, right? So anyway, there's some deeper questions for, you know, how even with small children, I mean, these, like I said, as you develop in them the ability to understand these things, they are able to take, you know, quite a bit. So the next question was Suruchi. She had a heavy reaction, but the king did not, and that was something that came through in the pulpit when Prabhupada writes about, you know, the king and his behavior and his feelings and sentiments when Dhruva left. He was so devastated, and he was atoning for he wanted to atone for his misbehavior. As a king, he was meant to give a good example. He was meant to follow. He was meant to uphold religious principles. But instead of doing that, he was weak. And he acknowledged that, and he felt so bad that he gave up his kingship, and just day and night he was regretting, and he was thinking about his son, his wonderful son. So this was king's behavior. And what did Suruchi do? She got him out. She spat on him. She insulted him. She ridiculed him. She wished he would be dead, because she said, you have to take another birth. And then when Dhruva left off, she was fine. She did nothing about it, right? So what kind of reaction did she suffer? She was burnt in the forest fire, and Krishna predicted that to Dhruva. But the king was not. He didn't go through this heavy reaction because of his atonement. So we had a nice discussion with the children about what is atonement. What does it mean to say sorry to somebody? It doesn't mean that we just walk away and say, I'm sorry. This is how children do, right? No. It means that you actually understand what did you do, what kind of offense one has done, and how to feel sorry, and be in that person's shoes, and go and apologize. And also try to do something which would, like a service to that devotee, as an act of apology, right? In other words, to feel empathy for the person, and to actually feel sorry deeply for our actions. So anyway, so we discussed that a little bit, and then I already told you about the quality of gratefulness, that Dhruva Maharaj really exemplified in the story. Then there's other questions, and how his mother did not just lament for what had happened when she heard that Dhruva was insulted by the stepmother. She didn't just, the natural reaction for a mother would be, oh, what to do now? Feeling so sorry. Not only have I been neglected and rejected, but the child also. And that was a very, very painful situation for her. But she didn't just lament. She did something about it. She made something wonderful out of something really horrible. So this is Niti's faith and that comes through. And then, of course, the last one is Suniti was neglected by her husband, but she was not the object of pity. In fact, she became glorified. So what can we learn from this? That a person's devotion to Krishna is what really matters in the end, right? It's not a material situation that is the key. One can be, one has to be a good devotee, and that's the glory of that devotee, right? Just like in the story of Parikshit Maharaj, he was glorified in every way because of his reaction to the news that he was going to be get. Same thing here. Suniti has been glorified because of her reaction to the news that her son has been insulted. How did she react to it? And the way she reacts is going to Krishna, getting closer to Krishna. And Parikshit Maharaj also did that. As soon as he heard that he's been cursed, he took that curse on his head and he surrendered. And he had nothing bad in his heart against Shringi or his circumstances or become dejected. No. So all these things come across very well in the story. And of course, some of the lessons we talked about. Don't be envious of others if you desire something. And these lessons, we don't have to make it like a homework, okay, this is what we learned. We just do it as we discuss. As we go into the story, we just make it really fun and interact. One thing we have to remember, we should not make the study of Srimad Bhagavatam as a schoolwork, something that one has to work for or like a homework, because the kids already have too much of that. Srimad Bhagavatam should be presented in a way which is really enlightening and joyful. The children are looking forward to doing it. So if one cannot do it every day, but one should do it even for a short time, as many times in the week, if that's not possible, at least on the weekends. It would be very nice. And determination, of course, that was very clearly understood in the Dhruva story, how his focus on his goal was so intense that when he stood with one foot and he was pressing down the earth, was so kind of created so many tremors, among people. So that was his focus, and this is how we need to, love Krishna. So there's many stories like that, but I'm not going to go through that, every one of them. But every story has so many deep messages for us, which becomes very nice. So the idea is that, just recap a little bit of what I said, the spiritual character development that comes to the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the academic benefit also that comes to that, how, we can teach our children skills that are very important, useful for them through the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we discussed about the methodology of how to teach them. And we discussed some stories of how to take the children through this process. And just to give you some more ideas, just briefly, about some of the other things that are from other stories that can be so beneficial, just really quickly, we can go through some others, like the story of Vitasura is so powerful, where we teach our children, having a birth which is lower, like Vitasura had a birth from the demoniac side. That's not an obstacle in our devotional service, and this translates into treating everybody nicely, treating everybody as a spirit soul rather than looking down on them, bullying them. Very important to create that vision, and then creating in them a lot of and through stories showing how. Another thing that I remember doing, it was this story of Jaya and Vijay and the 4 Kumaras. How amazing it was. The sacrifice that Jaya and Vijay did to fulfill the desire of Krishna when he wanted to fight. They were willing to take that punishment because they knew that deep down in Krishna's heart was his desire to come and fight. And he will only fight with his confidential devotees. And so kind of sacrifice that we see again and again among these great souls for the sake of Krishna. For example, the sacrifice of Devaki and Vasudev, when they were willing to have 7 of their children killed mercilessly just to have Krishna finally, the pain that they were willing to have, and then the analysis of all these things also becomes a lot of fun for them. For example, I remember we were debating about whether the 4 Kumaras were right or whether Jaya Vijaya were right. And so many, good things came out of that. We talked about the problem of anger that we saw in the 4 Kumaras. So we had a long discussion about anger. When is anger good? When is anger not good? Can be very detrimental. We brought in many other stories, like Dhruva's anger with the Yakshas, and so many other stories like that. I remember in the Gajendra story, we were talking about curses, whether curses can be actually from a devotee are never meant to be detrimental. It's meant for a benefit. So if a devotee gets upset with us, how do we take that? And one of the things that I've been doing with the older children is the story of Kardamuni and Devahuti. For young people, it's such a good story because it really goes deep into, as they grow older and they enter Grihastha life. It's a very, very good story of teaching them the different, the benefits of good Grihastha life versus, Brahmedi life. And it's such a nice example of something that children start to understand, especially girls, as they get more and more aware of these things. It's a very nice thing to start preparing them through this story of the relationship of a man and woman, how a woman is always meant to nurture. She's always a mother, and why she's addressed as a mother. So we get that very clearly through all these stories. And so just about any life skill, any things that we are trying to train our children, it can be found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, and so I think this is I'm going to stop here for a little while and ask if anybody has questions. And then we had also the Brahaspati, Indra and Brahaspati story, which is just quite amazing how Indra offends his teacher Brahaspati, his spiritual master. And we went through all the different stages, how, why Indra fell down. What is it that we have to be careful in our spiritual life? The pride, our lack of respect, which creates lack of respect to superiors, and how that can lead to a big offense in our life. And, so we have to be we how we use our money, how we use our wealth, and not create offenses. So like this, we can go through story. Okay, so we'll stop here. If you have any questions regarding the study of Srimad Bhagavatam for our children, please let's share with me. Hare Krishna.
Please have it.
Yes. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I had a query. Thank you for such beautiful instructions and guidance. We really need it. So Mataji, do you recommend some time of in a week or in a day, or how much time should be devoted for this study, specifically with elementary kids and also with the high school going kids?
Yes. So, Prabhupada said his books should be read every day, but I know for a lot of people it's not practical, especially, so you have to find what is very practical for you. Ideally, a little bit every day is great, but if you cannot manage that, then twice a week or every other day or just on the weekends, any study of Srimad Bhagavatam in any extent will be very, very valuable. So if there are children who are at home with you or with the parents, then you have a lot, you have them, so you can do that every day. And then when they go to school, then you can do it when they come home, You can sit together as a family and read and discuss,
Sure, Mataji. Mataji, when now the summer vacations are approaching, in that, if we have to start with the kids, do you recommend starting from the very first canto? Because first canto is too much, that is not much story, so they might not find it more engaging.
Yeah.
So if we have to basically start with, and just as you said, stories, so where can we start with? And it is irrespective of any group, because both the kids are 5 years apart, and if I have to have them at a one time, from which chapter or which story do you recommend that we can start, Mataji?
Yeah, how old are they?
One is 8-year-old and another is 13.
Yeah, okay, that's good. No, you should first do some stories, and when they have enough attraction for Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you can go back to the first canto. But it's always good to start with the stories. For example, Prahlad is practically almost the entire 7th canto. These are very big stories. And then of course we have Dhruva Maharaj, which is 5 chapters. So you can do stories like that, Gajendra, so many stories, Jai and Vijay story. You can pick out many, many stories, and you finish one, you get to the next one. And the speed would depend on if you don't want to make it too slow and you don't want to go too fast. You see? You want to allow for some discussion. And but then if you're very slow, then that may create a problem where children will get restless. Suppose you're spending a lot of time on one verse, then the children will get restless, they'll start getting distracted. So you want to keep a good pace. If you have a little bit of time, you can read some purpose ahead of time, and that really helps also. When my children were growing up, we were running a preaching center, and we had no time. I had no time. So I would just sit with them at that moment, and spend 2 hours or 3 hours every day just in Srimad Bhagavatam. And because I feel that it covers all the language arts, you see. And so I was not worried. After going through them, studying with them, Srimad Bhagavatam, the only other subjects I did with them was math, and then the extracurricular activities such as music, and we had a lot of events we would go out to, for preaching purposes. We were doing a lot of, tables and at parks, and so they had a lot of outreach things that we did in the afternoon. But in terms of study, I depended on Srila Prabhupada's books for most of the things, And then they studied the other subjects much later, like after they were 12 years old, after 12. So it depends on, of course, most of your children are going to school, so you have to adapt accordingly to their schedule. But I know one thing, that if once you are determined and children develop a taste for it, then you will find the time, you see. You will find the time. Yeah, it will really help, because especially your child going into high school, the things get really difficult at that point. High school age is very emotionally very difficult, because there's so much pressure to conform to the peer group, and the child needs that conviction. Why I believe in things that are different, and to stick to it. See?
Yes, Mataji. Mataji,
Yeah.
there's one thing, one more. Like, suppose
Yes.
if we have them, because kids nowadays, they are so much into reading, right? So if they want to read it by themselves, is it a good idea that the elder one or the younger one, they read it? We surely will sit with them, but if they read it and then they want to have their realizations, or then they want to have their discussions, is this a right way to approach this?
No, I wouldn't recommend that. Of course, any approach is wonderful, because it's such a transcendental book. But what I would recommend is that you just discuss and stop as you go along, because it's much more effective. If they had to read everything, then by the time you come back to it, they would have forgotten a lot, you see?
Right.
Yeah. So this is by discussing with them and keeping the channels open, you are putting them, right there in the present, and you're grabbing their attention in a way where they enjoy, they like that challenge, that mental challenge. They like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji. Yeah, if the child, he himself wants to read the Srimad Bhagavatam by themselves. I mean, I do homeschooling, so Srimad Bhagavatam is in morning. Few minutes we read Srimad Bhagavatam together and share the realizations with each other. But apart from that, he got so interested that he started reading it by himself, though the translations. But then there are few things which are not child appropriate. He's not yet 7. How do we, keep them away from that, and then also let him read? I don't want to, to say don't read Srimad Bhagavatam, but then he likes to read it like a regular novel book, any other kid's book. He will pick up the book and he will read himself. So how do we tell them not to read few content which are not child appropriate?
You mean in the Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, so for example, what did you come across that you felt it was not child appropriate?
Many a time it says that it talks about their physical attraction, about their physical feature, and Kapila Dev's father and mother's meeting and things like that, and so
so it's always nice to do Srimad Bhagavatam with them, because that way you can put meaning to it. You can have it, if you're with them when they're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, it's a lot better. As they get older, they'll be okay reading by themselves. But since they're young, then it's always nice to read with them, to take out the time And if he wants to read on his own, then yes, he can also read, and he can read stories like Prahlad or Dhruva and any other stories. There's Ambarish story, so many wonderful stories, you know. So you can monitor where he wants to go. What he's reading, in other words, if he does read on his own. Okay. So now in terms of material that can be difficult, embarrassing for for a parent, even when you're studying with them, we have to understand that nothing in the Srimad Bhagavatam is going to be detrimental for them, even when they're talking about. Even when they're talking about compromising situations between a man and woman. Like, for example, in the Puranjan story, we heard the story of Puranjan and his wife. There's some noise there, isn't it? Yeah. So there's some story of Puranjan and his wife, right? So they are put in, there's detailed descriptions of some of the aspects of a woman's body and everything. So first of all, we have to understand that nothing in the Srimad Bhagavatam is detrimental for our children, because when we do read things like that, it has a very good context. Because very soon in the Puranjan story, we hear that how both of them are suffering, due to sense gratification. So we also hear about the effects of such association. Okay, and so it's not without context. So it means that it gives very clearly that a relationship between man and woman is meant to have a higher purpose. Okay, in other words, sex is put in a perspective where there's good sex, right sex, and where there's bad sex. Where we see in the story of Diti and Kashyapa Muni, but then we see wonderful stories like Karda Muni and Devahuti and their relationship, between husband and wife. So in other words, the point comes across in Srimad Bhagavatam that sex is meant for a higher purpose. And this is the message there that clearly, if you read with them and you guide them through it, it comes very clear. Because you see, material world is such that they're going to pick up this topic anyway, just by being in the world. What to speak if they're going to school? They're going to come across, sex and violence. They're going to hear about it. They're going to, hear their friends talk about it. They're going to see things about it. They can't escape it. So by teaching them about these things with certain boundaries, to the children, you're actually preparing them for healthy relationships in future, and you're preparing them why it's important to protect themselves, because any relationship which is not based on the religious institution of marriage is not accepted, right? Because it leads to bad consequences. And all these messages come so clearly through the Bhagavatam. How a woman's body is meant for nurturing and not for sex and stuff like that. So it's important that they understand these things. How when they describe a woman's body is because ultimately she's meant to be a mother, you see. So and you can do that as a parent, or you can make that so clear to the children and train them. So we have to have the faith that nothing in the Srimad Bhagavatam is going to be bad for the children, because it's put there with context. You see, it's giving the consequences of good behavior. It's giving the consequence, and same thing with violence. Yes, there's a lot of violence in Srimad Bhagavatam. We hear about story of Parushram, and we hear about Krishna killing all the demons in very, very creative ways, right? He's tearing Bakasura's beak, he's suffocating Agasura, and very gruesome, pictures. But we don't feel like that. Why? Because it's Krishna in the picture. He's protecting his devotees. And never are you going to see that Nanda and Yashoda are going there to help Krishna kill these people. You'll never hear of his friends killing the demons. It's just Krishna. So it gives the message clear that when there's a problem, Krishna will help me. I don't need to worry about it. It's not creating violence in the children. It's Krishna who's doing it. You see?
Yes,
in Bhagavad Gita, if Arjuna is doing the killing, but that's based on religious principles. Krishna is making those religious principles. We don't create them, and that comes very clear in Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna follows the instructions of Krishna. Okay, so we should never think that that these things can ever be detrimental to our children. But I do I do understand that it's very important to be with the children when they're reading, because you'll get a lot more. They'll get a lot more out of it, and then as they get older and you've done your training, then they'll naturally read on their own. You see?
Yes, Mother. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me, Mataji? Yeah, I
Yes.
just had a small request, Mataji. It's a beautiful lecture. Yesterday's also and today's. The slideshow was wonderful. Is it any way possible that would you be able to share all the slides, Mataji, in the group? If Preeti Vilasini Mataji could coordinate or somebody, because
Yes.
I really wanted to have those questions at hand, so that might be easy for us to go through, because those questions are very, very nice. Those are the
Yes.
thought-provoking questions, and that's what happens, when we read the story, we do not know what questions actually to ask, especially me. I'm not good at that. So
Okay. Yes, Mataji. I have 3 stories only in this slide presentation, and definitely I can share that and I'll work with Preeti Mataji on this.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm trying to make a small book on just the questions of that parents and teachers can use, to when teaching Srimad Bhagavatam. But I'll tell you one thing, that these questions come naturally also, as you read. Yeah, but I will share. I'm just saying that they come so natural, because as you read, you get these realizations and you also get into proper purpose, you see, and they come. And children, benefit even if it's not, in any form. In other words, even if you're not able to go that deep, there's still so much benefit. You shouldn't get discouraged, okay, in any way at all. Because, see, parents will, even though you may be also reading with your child the first time, but yet you have a wealth of experience as an adult, which a child doesn't have, you see, your own life experiences. I remember when I was reading Srimad Bhagavatam, that was the time when we sat down and discussed so many things, that was happening in our own family, in our, with our relatives, with our, with the greater devotee community. And that was all in light of the Bhagavatam, trying to find solutions to the problems, training them that everything is here and we just have to sit and, talk about it and connect it, you see? So everything came up, and the relationship between the child and the parent becomes very, very close, because they open up. This is the time when they open up. Otherwise, they don't open up, right? We all experience as they go to school, they start closing up in so many ways.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else have a question or a comment?
Shravanti Mataji?
Yes?
Anyone have any more questions for Mataji or any comments?
Yeah, I think we're getting very close to our time. So anyway, I wanted to tell you before I go to before our time is up, that So we have another section called Preaching is the Essence, and I don't know how much time we have for that, but I did want to tell you about the books that we collectively are coming out with. And of course, everybody may be knowing about the Homeschooling Krishna's Children or may not be knowing, but this is a book, it's a guidebook on how to raise children as in Krishna consciousness. It's a very very basic guide and very and kind of covers just about everything that and a lot more that I spoke in the seminar. And then we are collectively, many parents throughout the world, we are publishing these books on Srimad Bhagavatam, canto by canto, chapter by chapter, a systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam for our children. And all these, there are many activities in the book. There's summaries, questions, higher thinking questions, multiple choice questions based on the chapter. And then we have many activities that help the child to understand the philosophy in that chapter, to understand the message, the lessons in the chapter. For example, we have critical thinking activities, we have analogy activities, we have introspective activities, and then we have also the acting, the theater, and we have word searches and poems. It's a very fun way. It's a fun way to study Srimad Bhagavatam. So we finished Canto 1, which has got 2 volumes, and then we also finished Canto 2, which is also available, and we are working on Canto 3. So if anybody is interested, just write to me and I'll direct you to the place where now it's available on Amazon.com. So if anybody is interested, can also order. And if there's some bulk orders, then I can help with that, because then you get a further discount through Amazon.com. You get a big discount if there's bulk orders. So a typical book like Canto 1 would cost only $7 per book. So it's become very reasonable now due to these facilities. So yes.
So Mataji, can we tell Vilasi Mataji, all of whoever wants to order, so therefore we will have a count of number of people who would like to get the books, Mataji?
Yes, like I said, it's a lot cheaper if I do it, because they give a wholesale to me. So yes, that would be a lot cheaper. So any of the books you'll get a discount. For example, volume 1 is $7, volume 2 is $7, volume 1 is $8, Canto 2 is $9 per book. And this is a big contrast from what we were doing earlier. So yes, that would be very nice if you want to do it. It's,
Thank you, Mataji.
Yes. So I think we should stop, isn't it? Because it's already 10:30. I have not covered the last section, which is preaching is the essence. Yes?
Hey Krishna Mataji, can I have your email ID where I can contact you for the kids classes or the books?
Okay, let me see if I don't have it here. Yeah, there it is. So you can please note it down.
Thank you, Mataji.
Okay, thank you all very much for being such good participants. I enjoyed, interacting with all of you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji.
So much for the
valuable association.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Really look forward to having your association again in future, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Vanchakautarभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यः च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो
नमो नमः.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.